You stole from this company. The words landed like a gunshot. Maya Carter didn't even flinch at first. She was sitting at the long glass boardroom table she had helped redesign 5 years ago, reviewing quarterly projections. Across from her stood her husband, Daniel Carter, calm and polished as ever. You've been stealing for 18 months. He continued, clicking a remote. The screen behind him lit up. 43 transactions. $12 million. All authorized under her executive credentials. Every face at the table turned toward her. The records were flawless. Dates, authorization codes, security confirmations. Her name stamped on every line. Maya's stomach dropped. Not because she was guilty, but because she understood instantly how carefully this had been constructed. This isn't real, she said evenly. Daniel, what are you doing? The board has already voted, he replied. Your clearance is suspended. The doors opened. 2 officers stepped inside, and then another woman walked in, tall, immaculate, wearing white. She crossed directly to Daniel and kissed him in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the room. Everyone. Daniel said smoothly. Meet Vanessa Reed, your new head of strategy. Maya's job. The division she had built from nothing. The department responsible for more than half the company's revenue. Her entire career. Handed to his mistress in a single theatrical moment. Phones were recording. This wasn't just betrayal. It was execution. The officers stepped toward her. Then the doors opened again. A man walked in quietly, and the room shifted without anyone understanding why. Adrian Vale. Most people in the building only knew him as the estranged son of the late founder. He had avoided the company for nearly a decade. Until now. Everyone sit down, he said calmly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Even the officers hesitated. Daniel straightened. This is a closed board meeting. My father passed away 3 days ago, Adrian said, placing a document on the table. As of this morning, I am the sole owner of this company. Silence swallowed the room. You'll wait outside, Adrian told the officers. They left. He studied the screen for a long moment. Then he said, I want a full independent forensic audit. No one touches financial records until it's complete. His eyes shifted to Daniel. Yours included. Something flickered in Daniel's expression. Maya saw it. Adrian saw it too. He turned to her for the first time. This is not over, he said quietly. You can breathe. She didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until then. She walked out with her head high. She waited until the elevator doors closed before she allowed herself 60 seconds to break. Exactly 60. Then she wiped her face and went back to being the woman who built empires. The audit results came fast. The transactions had been authorized under Maya's credentials. But from IP addresses that weren't hers. Nearly half occurred on days she wasn't even in the building. The money traced back to a shell company. Owned by Daniel. For 2 years, he'd been siphoning funds and using her as cover. 2 years. The same 2 years he'd taken her on a carefully planned vacation, telling her they were reconnecting. That night, Maya went home to the apartment that was in her name. Daniel was waiting. We need to talk, he began. How long? She asked. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Get out, Maya. This is my home, my lease, my money. You have 3 minutes before I call the police myself. He tried to intimidate her with posture, with tone. She didn't move. He left. She locked the door, slid down against it, and cried in a way she hadn't cried since her mother's funeral. The next morning she filed for divorce. The morning after that, Adrian sent a company-wide announcement restoring her position publicly. Clearing her name in detail. Signed personally, no PR filter, no legal spin, just the truth. Daniel disappeared from the building. Vanessa was escorted out before noon, and Maya stayed, because she had built that place. And she would not let a liar rewrite her legacy. Over the next weeks, Adrian moved through the company like controlled fire. Precise, quiet, effective. He didn't grandstand. He fixed things. He came to her office one evening. Why did you walk into that room? She asked him. You could have handled it through lawyers. He paused. What was happening was wrong, he said. I was here. Simple. No hero speech, no performance. She respected that. 6 weeks later, they were the last two people in the building. They talked about contracts. Then about grief. He admitted he hadn't spoken to his father in 6 years before he died. I came to the office after the funeral, he said, because this is a problem I know how to solve. And the other one? She asked. I don't. For the first time, she saw the fracture under the control. And something shifted. She wasn't looking for love. But she was noticing him, and that scared her more than anything Daniel had done. Part 2. 3 months after the boardroom disaster, the company was stable again. Clients had returned. Revenue was steady. Maya had become the symbol of resilience, proof that the company's core remained intact. Adrian told her that directly one afternoon. They trust you, he said. He didn't dress it up. He just meant it. Somewhere in those months, their conversations changed. Strategy turned into book recommendations. Meetings turned into late-night coffee in empty conference rooms. He remembered how she took her coffee. Black, no sugar. He noticed when she worked too late. He brought dinner for the floor on Fridays. And delivered hers himself. She told herself it meant nothing. She was 14 weeks out of a marriage built on lies. She wasn't ready for anything else. Then March came. And with it, 2 pink lines. She sat in her apartment staring at the test result for nearly an hour. She did the math. It was Daniel's. The timing was undeniable. That night, Adrian asked her to come upstairs to review a contract clause. Instead, he walked around his desk and placed a small velvet ring box beside her. I know this isn't perfect timing, he said. But I want a future with you. Her heart twisted. She pushed the box back gently. I'm pregnant. He didn't react immediately. It's Daniel's. Silence. I won't trap you, she said. You've done enough for me. He picked up the ring box. Is that the only reason? He asked. It's enough. He nodded. All right. No argument. No guilt. No pressure. He respected her answer. That hurt more than if he'd fought. 5 weeks later, Daniel showed up at her door after hearing about the pregnancy. That's my child, he said. Get your hand off my door, she replied. He tried to talk about rights. She threatened to call his parole officer. He left. Her hands shook afterward. She called Adrian. I'll handle it, he said, and he did. 2 weeks later, she asked him to meet her at a small cafe. When I refused you, she said. It wasn't because I don't care. He waited. It was because I'm afraid of choosing wrong again. He studied her for a long moment. Are you ready now? I'm closer. She wrapped her hands around her cup. The child is mine, she said firmly. Whoever is with me is with both of us. His expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. I know, he said. I told you that already. Tell me again. I don't care whose child it is. I care about you. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Okay, she said. We go slow. He nodded. We go slow. But life had other plans. At 22 weeks, a routine scan turned into a second appointment. Then a third. Then a specialist. The diagnosis was quiet. Clinical. Devastating. Without immediate treatment, the condition would progress aggressively. But treatment during pregnancy carried extreme risk to the babies. It was twins. 2 steady heartbeats. I'm carrying to term, Maya said. Adrian's hand tightened around hers under the table. He didn't argue. He asked the doctor practical questions instead. What do we do to keep her strong? In the hallway afterward, he looked at her. I'm here, he said. Every day. She believed him, and he proved it. He drove her to appointments. Installed a heater in her office when her circulation changed. Learned how to cook the few foods she could tolerate. One night, sitting on her sofa while the twins moved beneath his hand, she asked, Are you scared? Every day, he said. What do you do with that? I've been going to church, he admitted. I'm learning how to pray. What do you pray for? He didn't hesitate. You. She loved him then. Not for saving her. Not for power, but because he stayed. Every appointment, every night, every fear, he stayed. Part 3. The twins came at 36 weeks. A boy and a girl. Healthy, loud, perfect. And then the monitors started screaming. Maya's numbers dropped. Doctors moved fast. Someone held Adrian back. He didn't shout. He didn't collapse. He stood there and prayed without moving his lips. 4 minutes felt like 4 lifetimes. Then, she's stable. He covered his mouth and closed his eyes. 3 days later, the doctor returned with new results. They had rerun the tests. Repeated them. Sent them to 2 other facilities. There's no trace of the condition. The doctor said carefully. I cannot medically explain it. The room went silent. Maya cried quietly. Adrian leaned forward, face in his hands. I prayed for you every night. He whispered. I know, she said. 6 weeks later, Daniel tried one final move, suing for paternal rights. DNA results were submitted 2 hours into the meeting. Both twins were Adrian's. The pregnancy timeline had shifted. Conception occurred after she and Adrian had truly come together. Daniel stared at the paperwork. Then he left. For good. That evening, Adrian stood in their apartment. The plants by the window, the whiteboard in the corner, 2 bassinets by the sofa. It's over, Maya said. He nodded. How does it feel? He thought for a moment. Like something I need to go finish. He went to his father's grave alone. When he came back, he sat beside her on the sofa. I forgave him, he said quietly. How was it? Like putting down something heavy. They married that summer. Small ceremony. No spectacle. Just vows spoken clearly. No performance, no drama, just truth. 7 months earlier, Maya had been on the floor of her hallway, devastated. Now she stood in white, watching Adrian hold both babies with careful strength. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was something harder. Built from betrayal. Refined by grief. Strengthened by choice. She hadn't been saved. She had stood up. He hadn't rescued her. He had walked beside her. And together, they built something no one could take. Now I want to know, what moment hit you the hardest? The boardroom betrayal? The hospital hallway? The miracle no one could explain? Tell me your answer. Share this with someone who needs proof that broken is not the same as finished. And if you believe healing and real love are worth fighting for, stay with me. Because there are more stories like this waiting. 3 months after the day her husband tried to erase her in a boardroom, Maya Carter was still standing. Not just standing, leading. The company had steadied. Clients who had paused their contracts during the chaos were quietly renewing them. Investors who had watched from a cautious distance were re-engaging. The division Maya built, once almost handed to her husband's mistress, was again producing over half the company's revenue. She had become the proof that the foundation hadn't cracked. Adrian Vale never said things he didn't mean, so when he stepped into her office one afternoon and said, "They stayed because of you," she knew it wasn't flattery. "They trust you," he added simply. It wasn't soft, it wasn't romantic, it was fact. But facts, when spoken by the right person, can land like something warmer. Their working relationship evolved in quiet increments. It started with longer meetings, then late evenings when the building emptied and neither of them seemed in a hurry to leave. They debated contract clauses, risk assessments, expansion strategy. Then one night he recommended a book. She read it, disagreed with half of it, told him so. They argued about it in the elevator for 3 floors, both almost smiling by the time the doors opened. He noticed how she took her coffee. Black, no sugar. He noticed when she skipped lunch. On Fridays, he ordered food for the entire executive floor. But he brought hers himself. She told herself she was imagining the intention behind that. She was 14 weeks removed from a marriage that had detonated in public. She was not ready to imagine anything new. Then March arrived. And with it, a Tuesday morning that split her world open again. The clinic was small and private. She hadn't used the company's medical network. She didn't want whispers. She sat on the paper, covered exam table while the doctor spoke gently. Pregnant. She stared at the wall for a full 30 seconds before she reacted. Then she did the math. Her breath left her slowly. It was Daniel's. The timeline was clean, clinical, unavoidable. She drove home in silence, sat on her sofa, looked at her hands resting against her knees. She had survived betrayal, public humiliation, divorce, reputation warfare. Now this. That evening, Adrian called her office at 7. "Do you have 10 minutes to review a clause?" he asked. Her voice was steady. "Wes." She walked upstairs. They sat across from each other, discussing indemnity language and liability caps like nothing in her world had shifted. Then, he closed the file. "There's something I need to say," he said. His voice had changed. He walked around the desk, not close enough to crowd her, but close enough to be deliberate. "I know the timing isn't ideal," he said. "I know what you've been through. I'm not asking you to rush anything. But I want a future with you." He placed a small velvet ring box beside her hand. He didn't open it. He didn't kneel. He simply offered it. Maya stared at the box. At him. At the steadiness in his expression. A man who had walked into a room full of cameras and stopped her destruction with nothing but authority and clarity. A man who had stayed. Her throat tightened. She pushed the ring box back gently. "I'm pregnant," she said. He didn't flinch. "It's Daniel's." The silence stretched. "I won't trap you," she continued. "You deserve clean beginnings. I won't tie you to someone else's mess." He picked up the box, weighing it in his palm. "Is that the only reason?" he asked quietly. "It's enough." He nodded once. "All right." No persuasion, no guilt, no attempt to override her decision. He respected it, and that almost broke her. He left her in his office with the kind of silence that only follows something both right and painful. 5 weeks later, Daniel showed up at her apartment. She opened the door expecting groceries. Instead, she saw him. He blocked the door with his hand. "I have rights," he said. "That's my child." "Move your hand," she replied evenly. He tried to talk about civility. She reminded him of the boardroom. She told him she would call his parole officer. He removed his hand. She shut the door, locked it, and only then did her fingers begin to shake. She called Adrian. He answered on the second ring. She told him everything. "Is your door locked?" he asked first. "Yes." "Good. Don't open it for anyone. I'll handle it." She didn't ask how. She didn't need to. Daniel didn't return. 2 weeks later, Maya asked Adrian to meet her at a cafe 2 blocks from the office. Neutral ground, public, safe. She arrived first, watched him walk down the sidewalk, hands in his coat pockets, moving at that same unhurried pace, like time adjusted itself around him. He sat across from her. "I owe you an explanation," she began. "You don't owe me anything. Let me finish." She wrapped her hands around her coffee. "When I refused you, it wasn't because I don't care. It was because the last man who gave me a ring made me feel safe while he was building something behind my back. And I'm afraid of choosing wrong again." He listened without interrupting. "I wasn't protecting you from me," she continued. "I was protecting us from me not being ready." He studied her for a long moment. "Are you ready now?" he asked. "I'm closer." She inhaled. "The child is mine. Whoever I'm with is with both of us. I won't separate that." Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, not hesitation. Resolve. "I know," he said. "I told you before. I don't care whose child it is. I care about you." Her chest tightened. "Tell me again." "I don't care," he repeated. "I'm here for you. All of it." She looked out the window at strangers moving through an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Then back at him. "Okay," she said softly. "We'll go slow." "We'll go slow," he agreed. But slow didn't mean easy. At 22 weeks, a routine scan turned serious. Then urgent. Then devastating. The specialist didn't rush the words. Didn't dramatize them. The condition was aggressive. Treatment now would threaten the babies. Waiting would threaten her. Silence filled the consultation room. Maya made her decision before the doctor finished explaining probabilities. "I'm carrying to term," she said. It was twins. 2 heartbeats they had discovered at 18 weeks. 2 lives she could feel growing stronger each day. Adrian's hand tightened around hers under the table. He didn't argue. Didn't plead. Didn't try to persuade her otherwise. He asked questions instead. What can we do to keep her stable? What should we monitor? What changes do we expect month to month? He took notes. Afterward, in the parking lot, he looked at her like a man memorizing something precious. "I'm here," he said. "Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, every day." And he was. Appointments, medication schedules, diet changes. He rearranged his calendar without announcement. Installed a heater in her office when her circulation changed and she couldn't stay warm. Learned how to cook the few foods she could tolerate without nausea. Drove her to the river on Sundays because she once mentioned liking water. No dramatic gestures, just presence. One night, sitting on her sofa while the twins shifted beneath his hand, she asked, "Are you scared?" He didn't answer immediately. "Yes," he said finally. "Every day." "What do you do with it?" He hesitated. "I've been going to church." She turned toward him. "A colleague invited me. I went once. Then again. I'm learning how to pray." "What do you pray for?" He didn't look away. Her breath caught. "Every night," he added. That was the moment she knew. Not when he proposed. Not when he defended her. Not when he handled Daniel. But here, on a quiet sofa, his hand resting gently over 2 small movements beneath her skin. She loved him. Not because he saved her, but because he stayed. Through fear. Through uncertainty. Through a future that was anything but guaranteed. And neither of them knew yet how much that staying would be tested. The twins arrived before dawn. At 3:07 a.m., Maya's water broke. Adrian was at her door in less than 20 minutes, dressed, steady, alert in a way that suggested he hadn't truly slept in weeks. Serena met them at the hospital. Labor was long but controlled. Maya gripped Serena's hand on one side and Adrian's on the other. He didn't flinch once. Not at her pain. Not at the blood. Not at the fear sitting just beneath everything. At 7:40 a.m., their son was born. 2 minutes later, their daughter followed. Both crying. Both breathing. Both perfect. Relief flooded the room. Then the monitors started screaming. The shift was immediate. Nurses moved. Doctors converged. Someone pushed Adrian back with a firm hand to his chest. Maya's numbers were dropping. Fast. There was no dramatic gasp. No movie scene collapse. She just went still. Adrian stood frozen outside the circle of motion. Serena gripped his arm. He didn't shout. Didn't panic. Didn't break. But something behind his eyes shattered. He stared at her. And prayed. Not with folded hands. Not with closed eyes. Just standing there, breathing carefully, silently begging. 4 minutes passed. 4 unbearable, endless minutes. The sounds in the room shifted. Different commands. A sharp instruction. A nurse's quick exhale that sounded almost like a laugh of disbelief. Then, Maya gasped. It was loud enough to reach the hallway. Adrian took a step forward. Someone stopped him again. Another minute. Then a nurse came out. "She's stable," she said. "I don't know how yet. But she's stable." He covered his mouth with his hand and closed his eyes. Serena wrapped an arm around him, and for the first time since she'd known him, he leaned into it. 3 days later, a doctor entered Maya's hospital room holding a folder with an expression he couldn't quite manage. The twins slept near the window. Soft. Unaware, Maya sat upright in bed. Adrian sat beside her. "We ran the tests," the doctor said carefully. "Multiple times. We had 2 additional facilities confirm." He hesitated. "There is no trace of the condition. Whatever was present at 22 weeks is no longer detectable." Silence. Maya stared at the ceiling. A tear slid sideways into her hairline. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. "I prayed for you," he said quietly. Every night. She reached for him. I know. 6 weeks after they brought the twins home, Daniel made one final attempt to insert himself back into her life. He arrived with a lawyer and a folder full of entitlement. He claimed paternal rights. He claimed interest. He claimed obligation. Adrian's legal team listened. 2 hours into the meeting, they submitted the DNA results. Both twins were Adrian's. The timeline, once assumed, had shifted. Conception had occurred later than Maya believed. In the quiet months after she and Adrian stopped pretending their connection was only professional, Daniel looked at the paperwork for a long time. He said nothing. Then he stood and walked out. For good. That evening, Adrian stood in their apartment. The one that had once been only hers. Plants lined the windowsill. A whiteboard leaned against the wall because Maya couldn't think without one. 2 bassinets rested near the sofa. He looked at it all like a man surveying something sacred. It's over, Maya said softly. Wes. How does that feel? He thought about the boardroom. The hospital hallway. The weight of his father's unfinished history. Like something I need to go finish, he said. The following Saturday, he went to his father's grave alone. He stood there for nearly an hour. He didn't rehearse a speech. He didn't justify old wounds. He simply said the words he hadn't said in time. When he returned home, Maya was sitting on the sofa with both babies sleeping against her. He sat beside her. I forgave him, he said. How was it? Like putting down something heavy. She nodded. She understood. Healing wasn't a moment. It was a direction, and they were walking in it. They married that summer. Small ceremony. No spectacle. Serena cried through the entire thing without apology. Adrian held Maya's hands and spoke his vows the same way he spoke everything important. Clear, steady, without decoration. I choose you, he said. Every day. No theatrics. No promises he couldn't keep. Just commitment. 7 months earlier, Maya had been on the floor of her hallway after throwing her husband out. Now she stood in white, watching Adrian hold their son and daughter with the same careful focus he once reserved for corporate strategy. Power had never been his most impressive trait. Staying was. Later that night, after the guests left and the babies were asleep, Maya found herself alone on the balcony. Adrian stepped beside her. Regret anything? He asked. She smiled faintly. I regret not believing sooner that I deserved better. He didn't respond with reassurance. He just wrapped an arm around her. Below them, the city moved the way it always did, indifferent, loud, alive. But up there, in that quiet space between what had been broken and what had been rebuilt, she felt something steady. Not the rush of survival, not the adrenaline of crisis, peace. This wasn't a fairy tale. It had betrayal, humiliation, illness, fear, and a hospital monitor that almost ended everything. But it also had choice, forgiveness, prayer whispered in hallways, and love that showed up every single day. Maya hadn't been saved. She had stood back up. Adrian hadn't rescued her. He had walked beside her. And together, they built something no boardroom, no scandal, no man with a grudge could ever dismantle again. Now, let me ask you something. If you were Maya, would you have forgiven love a second time? If you were Adrian, would you have stayed through fear like that? And if this story reminded you that broken doesn't mean finished, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Because sometimes the greatest comeback isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, and it lasts forever.